IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Paytm Money Upfront. Guys, we're heading into week 2 of the lockdown, and I'm sure it's been challenging for all of you, just as it's been for us. We're doing our best to make sure that we maintain our schedules, but beg your indulgence if we slip. In the meantime, if you're looking for more stuff to listen to, might I suggest you go dive into the archives. We've got over 6,000 episodes of content we've created over the last 5 years, and I'm sure there's something in there that you'd love listening to. Anyway, stay safe, and let me get you started with your show.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Geek Fruit Podcast with me, Tejas, Dinkar, and Abhimanyu. How's it going, guys?
Hey.
What's up?
Pajamas.
Huh?
Pajamas is what's up.
Pajama party.
Nice. Yeah, we are all doing a slumber party. We're a socially distant slumber party.
We're a physically distant group of people, but we're not socially distant because right now this recording is happening from our home. Dinkar is on an iPad. And we are listening to him through a sound card, but he's recording on his end, and we're recording on our end. The jig is up. The magic is gone.
The jig is out. He's not here for this episode.
That's also true.
That's because the DCAU is not his bag.
That's actually, but he has seen a fair few of these movies, which we're going to be talking about. Having said that, yes, I mean, I think we've always done the catch-ups or the roundups of all these films that come out maybe 2-3 a year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. That's because this is a much delayed, fresh installment of our sub-podcast series, What a Cartoon!
Yay!
Wait, pause. I'm waiting for the audience to finish cheering.
Auditorium goes crazy.
Yeah. So,
but yes, we're back with. We did a water cartoon a couple of years back, I want to say, on the DC Animated Universe. And now we're back doing a sequel because, believe it or not, they kept making movies.
It's
not like they heard an episode and then went, we're done.
And apparently people are into sequels. So, here's one. So, Dinkar, what are we going to be discussing today on this edition of What a Cartoon DCAU? And AU, of course, standing for Animated Universe. So the DC Universe has its own like thing going on, independent from all the movies and the video games, etc. Was spawned a long time ago. If we may just give a brief preamble, started with the much acclaimed Batman the Animated Series by Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, and then it kind of went on to spawn a golden age of just amazing animated films, which were, just straight out of the, comic books and really, really well made. So we've covered a lot of those movies, which, are a fair number on the previous episode. But yeah, so what are we going to be covering today, Dinkar?
Well, primarily what kind of kicked off the idea of doing this was the fact that Superman Red Sun came out a scant few weeks ago.
Scant, and, yes.
Yeah, very scant. But yeah, and that's always been a very interesting story in the first place. It was an Elseworlds feature back in the day. It is an
Elseworlds, yes.
Yeah, so basically it's about Superman being Russian. What if is, of course, the Marvel version of Elseworlds.
Yeah,
but that is the question they ask.
Yeah. And
do you think Marvel asks what if and DC says what else?
No, it's a if then else situation.
If then else, yes.
So I just want to, we're going to be talking about Superman Red Sun. Of course, there's some other films that have also come out. But first off, I want to ask both of you, okay, let's just ask a pertinent question, which is, are you guys Superman fans?
I am a Superman fan, but I would say he's far from my favorite character. Even in the DC verse, it's obviously Batman,
right,
primarily. And I don't think I'm as big a Superman fan as most people are, but I do think he's had some interesting arcs. And that actually is one of the reasons I like the more bizarre Superman stories, like Red Sun or like Speeding Bullets was another Elseworlds they did back in the day where he basically is Batman. So it's like, what if Clark Kent was found by, what if Kal-El was found by Thomas and Martha Wayne?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they name him Bruce and raise him to essentially be Batman. Like, I would seek out those stories more than... I didn't read a lot of standard Superman, but I would look for the weirder ones because those were more interesting to me.
Yeah. What about you, Abhimanyu?
Yeah, I am a fan. I mean, growing up, I wasn't as much because I thought he was a little one-dimensional. But now as I get older, I'm like, he has so much more going for him. Like, he has that underlying sense of calm, which is like... which it's very underrated because people think of him as a one-dimensional character. And I think early on, like in the Superman animated series, I think that was to his truest form. His truest form to
I
what
think
the
that's one of the
is.
best iterations of Superman we've ever gotten.
Yeah. So I don't think he's... I mean, apart from the DCAU, the DC...
Yeah.
apart from that, like...
Apart from DCAU.
That's kind of... has held up my interest for a Superman. I mean, obviously there's, everything else that has happened since, which, which is not the greatest.
No, I know we've had some bum iterations of Superman, but I will say this. I agree. I think Superman is fucking awesome. No. And I think you're right. I think what you bring up is a really solid point that, it's obviously cooler when you're, the sexier of the heroes, and the villains are obviously a lot more lauded because they're more, interesting at face value even. And, of course they have depth. But I think, I think Superman's role gets more and more interesting as time goes by. And I think people fail to see that. I mean, we've brought up this thing that, whatever Captain America is right now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is exactly what Superman does stand for. They've just kind of encapsulated that into that character right now before, DC even the movies could have a chance to do that. But I think Superman is a very layered character because it's harder and harder to be a good, honest man in today's world. And I think he typifies that, it's hard to be, a good guy and be rewarded for it in today's world.
Especially when you humanize him, like when Grant Morrison was it All-Star Superman? Where he basically pretty much got cancer, like that. Yeah. Like that kind of...
Where he becomes Superman the White.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, that's like, I think one of the greatest like Superman stories out there.
Yeah, I think there are lots of really good Superman stories. Sorry, Dinkar, you were saying.
I was just going to say that All-Star Superman is one of those, I think, which the movie version, the animated universe version, didn't do as much for me as the story itself did, just because they tried to condense so many great stories from the comic book arc into
it's true.
Like 60 minutes.
It's my favorite...
12
issues.
12 issues, right? Into like an hour.
But I think they did what they did with the Lex stuff. Man, Lex Luthor is amazing. I mean, he's amazing in Red Son as well. Yeah. But particularly in All Star and even other issues of just the fact that Lex's entire mission in his entire life is to rid the world of Superman, and then he becomes enlightened towards the end of it, which is really cool. I just like how they handle that. Yeah.
Actually, have a lot of like, as you get older, you realize that Lex is, he's actually, he's right. Like, you can't trust this, all-encompassing, powerful man of steel.
That's true. You can't.
Like, I'm like, you got a point, Lex.
Yeah,
I think that ties in really well to the theme of Superman Red Son, because, like you guys said, it's just really hard to show Superman being fallible or human because he's such an embodiment of good, and it's not easy for him to pull off this like balance, essentially, right?
Yes.
And Red Son kind of addresses exactly that by putting him in a situation where he can't quite do that. Like, he fails basically.
He fails miserably,
like, Lex's mission also
he's basically a dick.
Accordingly.
Okay, I have to establish this though. I think there's yes, he's kind of a dick in Red Son, but I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, one is obviously he grows up in the Soviet.
Just give us the concept of Red Son before you...
I was kind of trying to do that. But, I mean, so the fact that in this iteration, it starts in the early, maybe 30s, I want to say. 1940s, maybe.
Oh, that's 55.
Is it post-World War II? I think it is
so.
actually.
Cold
yeah.
War, right?
It's Cold War era,
It's Cold War.
right?
It's
Mid-War
correct,
War
yeah.
II.
So he starts. It starts in. Well, okay. I mean, like he's born maybe during the World War, the Second World War, and then he grows up in the time of Stalin, and basically during the Cold War is obviously a very tense moment for the Soviet Union, and the USSR is it's literally got its iron fist over the entire the United States, including Ukraine, where he's raised and born, this version of Superman. And it just, it just basically asks the questions, what would happen if the Man of Steel was an agent of the USSR? And it obviously, it's like the butterfly effect. Because Superman merely exists there, it kind of essentially changes the world irrevocably from that point. So all the major characters and players in the DC universe are affected in one way or the other. It doesn't happen that all the characters are now Russian, but some of them are because Superman exists, and some of them have vastly different lives because Superman doesn't exist in the US. So that's really kind of what the entire story is. It's 3 issues by Mark Miller, really, really good. And obviously now there's an adaptation, which is a animated film. So my first point about this film, and maybe we can just talk about this before we get into a break, but I definitely felt there's a distinction between, I mean, they have really tried to make Superman, and he just goes by Superman, by the way, in the whole thing. He doesn't even use his like Clark or whatever his Russian equivalent name is. He just goes by Superman. He's like, just call me Superman. And so,
which the way it's portrayed is that is what the USSR is forcing him to do, right? He's not allowed to be
adopt this all-encompassing personality. So he doesn't have an alter ego, which is the most interesting
He's basically a servant for the military. And then he obviously goes under Stalin's wing. That's where.
And what the interesting thing about, I mean, we'll talk obviously about the differences between the comic and the film, but like the thing that I saw in the film, which I thought in the beginning was a bit on the nose, but they obviously have to kind of escalate the fact that he's what he considers to be a very moral person who's trying to uplift the state and, help everybody get out of poverty and, build an entire state out of it. But they kind of really amp up the villain aspect of him and the menacing kind of thing that he's going to rule this entire government with an iron hand. And I don't want to spoil the film, but there are things that he does in the film that he doesn't do in the comics, and I think they had to do that because they needed to do this in a 90-minute or even less kind of film. So especially circumstances surrounding Stalin and stuff like that. But eventually he becomes the head of the state. What do you guys think of his? What did you think of Clark Kent and his accent? I just thought that was really funny. But
well, the first thing I noticed was, did you feel like his Russian accent was significantly lighter than the other Russian accents?
Yeah,
like you'd have him talking to like Svetlana, who'd be like, "What are you doing?" And then he'd be like, "Well, what I am doing is."
It had to be lighter.
Slightly lighter.
I don't know if it's because it's Jason Isaacs who's doing the voice, or if it's because he's the principal character. We all got to understand him absolutely clearly.
But man, his suit looks so good. Like the color that they've gone for, it's so cool.
The black and red color
so
scheme.
cool. Very cool.
So
I mean, we've always liked the black suit Superman, even in Death of Superman and Reign of Superman and all that stuff. Looks really, really
Russia's
good.
graphic design sensibility has always been on point.
So on point. So on
Even
point.
Nazi Germany. I mean.
All the US had is the poster of that lady in the factory and the Uncle Sam poster.
And Uncle Sam, yeah. But these guys are obviously on point. So what did you guys think of Superman's like ramp up to being the head of the state, and like what his intentions are for his own people, and how that kind of changes over the long timeline of this film?
I feel like, I think the allegory that Red Sun was trying to draw, both in the comic version and what I think they did in this movie, was kind of amp it up a lot more. The ideology that communism kind of started with all these ideals of being for the greater common good and so on. But the people in power get corrupted by power, and therefore you turn into a failed state. Which is
glad they don't have that power problem anymore.
Now the world is fine. Thank God we defeated communism. But I feel like what they did in this movie is take that same original idea of Red Sun and then like turn it up by like
to 11. Yeah, no, for sure. They really felt. I really
it was
did
at
feel
an
like
8.
that.
This one it's an 11.
Yeah. I mean, I think Superman was really trying to project his ideals to the rest of the world, even though from his point of view, he's like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. The whole world needs to, have this type of learning and a way to live. But ultimately, he realizes that, this is not, let humanity be humanity at the end of the day and not have a I can't say this word.
Like a totalitarian?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I don't know. My thing about this film is that, if you're comparing this Superman to the old school, like golden age Superman, which is, this truth, justice, and the American way, which is this fully jingoistic, all-American, savior, then that juxtaposes that original idea really, really well. And Mark Miller has kind of gone on to say that, that he started having this idea when he was a child, like teenager, essentially, right? When he was a kid, and then he kind of just built it up. So I think even the comics that he grew up reading of Superman, and even some of, I'd say it kind of reached us till maybe the 80s, 90s, that kind of Superman, was still this very stoic, very infallible Superman, which was just like, what was that guy's name? Major Justice in the Dexter Slab cartoons. Very like satirical version of like this all-American hero. I think just juxtaposing that, obviously this has a lot more nuance, but it feels like that's the opposite. This movie is the opposite of that version of Superman, not the Superman that we have currently, which is far more nuanced, has a little more depth, I think.
Also, on a wider level, and I don't know if this is an opportune moment to bring this up, but like in interviews, Mark Miller has said that he's like a cash grab kind of guy. Like he's looking for that edge in every story.
Really?
Yeah. Like he's admitted it. So now viewing it from that lens, it's like, oh, how do I make Superman? How do I, get as many people to read this comic as to do this?
Well, yeah, this comic only came out 7 years ago?
2003?
Really?
Oh, 2003.
I feel like
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, more like 17 years ago. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool.
And that inflicts in his other work, like Kick-Ass and Wanted. Like he's kind of known to just get, I mean, it's not bums and seats, but, get as many sticky fingers turning the pages, I guess.
True.
Yeah. Weren't you saying he wrote it when he was much younger, though? Like, maybe before.
Well, he came up with the
Cash
idea
Grab
when
days?
he was a lot younger.
Okay. Cool. Okay, interesting. Let's do this. Let's take a break. All right. We'll come back, talk about this movie a little bit more. And let's also run through what else has come out in the DCAU since we last caught up.
Hi, guys. This is Ayushi.
And I am Ritasha.
And welcome to Agla Station Adulthood.
It's a fun podcast we've got going on, and we'd love for you to tune in and enjoy with us.
Join us as we stop at various stations and discuss different topics that seem to be bothering us and hopefully
Dating,
you as well.
relationships, beauty, just being an adult, lots of different things.
We don't have a great grip on it, but we've done okay so far.
Catch Agla Station Adulthood every Thursday on the IVM app, the IVM website, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Hey, we're back. We're talking about Superman Red Sun from the DC animated universe and other films that have come out in the recent past. Any other
May
thoughts
I just
on,
say, before we
on Red
continue,
Sun? Yeah.
what has always amazed me about Red Sun right from the time I first heard the concept is the play on like USSR being a red state and him being the red sun and like the red sun of the kryptonite in this universe. Man,
of course.
So good.
I mean, a brilliant title. Yes.
That's a trifecta.
Yeah. It's almost like he came up with the title and went, I have to write the story now. It's just too good.
Yeah. Now let me work backwards on this.
Well, I mean, these are arguably the two most, popular regimes in the last 100 years. I'm sure they could have worked a title out of it. I mean, we could have a flash in the USSR, like a back in the USSR. That would be nice. Having said that, there's not many. They kind of had to reduce the number of cameos from other DC. Heroes and villains in this. But obviously, one person you cannot make a DC animated movie without clearly is the Dark Knight.
Batman.
The Batman.
Okay, first of all,
The
Roger
Nyet
Craig
Man.
Smith voices Batman in this. The last time he did it, I think, was for Batman Arkham Knight. So awesome to have him back. He's an amazing voice actor. And I just want to say, Batman, even in Russia, still fucking amazing.
There's this
He was such a
YouTube comment.
badass.
There's this YouTube comment on this trailer, right? And it says, "All right, guys, how do we make Batman more dangerous?" Someone way in the back, make him Russian.
Seriously.
Another comment was, seeing Batman smile is scary AF.
Man, that's what that when he smiled reminds me so much of Thomas Wayne. It's more like a Thomas Wayne version of Batman, especially like the Flashpoint kind of Batman, which is like this guy's he's just a fucking like terrorist.
Terrorist,
man. Yeah.
Just a,
He's
I mean,
a straight up terrorist, yeah. But he's
Yeah,
a suicide bomber.
straight up terrorist.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of like he's more like V in V for Vendetta than he is a Batman who's kind of fighting crime. He's like, crime is no longer a problem when the entire state is a crime right now. So I got to solve that first.
Yeah.
And obviously his means are absolutely extreme and radical. But man, it needs one man like him to make a statement. And in the comics, what's really
Of
cool
course,
is that it
Batman
reminds
is
me
going to
also a
be
lot of
anti-communist. He's a billionaire.
yeah, that's true. There's actually a really good line in the comic. I think
So is he
Diana
a
says it.
socialist? Is he a socialist in this film?
No, I mean, well,
Batman?
yeah, he is, but
He's against the communism.
he's just-
I think
He's just
he's
against the-
anti-communist.
he's anti-communist, yeah, and he's against the regime. That's basic. But there's a good quote in the book which Diana says. Oh no, not Diana. I think there's another character in the books which is not there, which is the son of Stalin, who is one of the principal characters, and he says, "Superman, you're the most anti-Marxist thing I've ever seen because you're proof that all men were not created equal." So I was just like, that's dope. So yeah, Batman is a badass in this, and he has basically one issue which is to himself. And what's really, really cool is that because this series spans a long timeline, Batman's kind of reign and effects are seen, like even by like the people like of the impoverished and just the people who are under this regime have like put up like spray paint kind of little logos of Batman, and they're just like it reminded me a lot of Sons of Batman from Dark Knight Returns. But it was pretty cool that Batman's effect and legacy is always going to be long lasting. Wherever you put him in the world, he's still going to be a dude.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
A lot of hockey pads.
A lot of hockey pads. And an Ushanka. I love it. All right. So
But,
any
just-
other final thoughts?
I was going to ask you, what do you think of the changes they made between the comic and the movie, though, overall? Like, without spoiling it, I guess?
Yeah. So without spoiling it,
Yeah.
the ending.
Hard to address, right? Well,
It's
what did you
not
prefer,
this-
let's say?
I actually
prefer the
prefer
comic.
I prefer the tone of the comic because it's not so overstated, like especially his like villainy and his whole empire. But I did like the Lex Luthor. Actually, I like both of the Lex Luthors. Incidentally, Diedrich Baker, who plays Lex Luthor in this, is actually the voice of Batman in Batman the Brave and the Bold. So,
he's born a Batman voice. Him, Will Arnett, these guys were meant to play Batman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. His voice is just Batman voice. Anyway, but having said that, yeah, I think I like the interpretation of Lex in the comics is that this guy is like a maniac essentially, and he has a very quick turn towards the end of the movie and the comic end the same way. But there's a very quick turnaround in his character in the comic. But in the movie, I think they see that in a little bit better. Even though they show that he's probably the most three-dimensional character in the entire thing, because he's shown as a very cruel man, especially when he creates this bizarro Superman to kind of fight the Red Sun Superman. And he's shown as a very cruel kind of tyrant where he doesn't really care about the feelings. And actually, that's okay. We can talk about this change because it's not really a spoiler. It happens in the first half of the film. But basically, when Lex creates this bizarro Superman to combat the real Superman, in the movie, he really cranks it up and he makes Superman, like he overpowers Superman, his Bizarro Superman, to try and beat the real Superman, and he ends up like just debilitating him, and it's a very cruel act that he kind of performs, that he's like, oh, we're cranking it with more power, this Frankensteinian kind of thing. But in the comic, there's a really, really cool version of that, which is the Superman in that and is fighting, the real Superman, and they find out that this is just a distraction that he's created for Superman. Meanwhile, they're sending like nukes to kind of blow up, Moscow and stuff like that. And both of the Supermen look at each other, and because they're in their heart of hearts like core good people, they both have to decide who's going to go to stop this thing. Yeah. And without a moment's hesitation, the Bizarro Superman freezes the Red Sun Superman, and he goes and he like.
That's so cool.
That is one of the best scenes in the whole book.
And isn't it really weird that they changed that of all things, especially to basically make a more cartoony villain out of Lex Luthor when. Yeah. Like maybe they were trying to emphasize that arc of his where he goes from being pretty much straight up like a capitalist jerk to kind of decent.
Yeah, I think it's good because you see a change in him over the years, because again, like this spans such a long period of time that he does grow, he does become like a lot better.
But I will say that
I appreciate
that
comic.
That change kind of makes sense at a story level, but I think the problem with trying to adapt it for the animated movies is, man, the problem that the DCAU always runs into is they do like 70, 75-minute movies, and things can get really cramped into it. So in this one, it's like around minute 25, you're seeing him be straight up a jerk. Minute 40, he's fine. And that just feels a lot more hurried because they don't have the luxury of time to flesh it out.
Yeah, they probably should have done it like a part 1, part 2.
Yeah, they could have. They should have.
They should have done that, actually.
Yeah, or like 3 40-minute like things for each issue. Yeah. The one thing I did kind of appreciate as a change in the comics is that in the comic, both Lois and Diana have like are love interests for Superman. Yeah, they both kind of want to be with him. And I think the best change they make is to Diana's character, where she kind of implies early on when they first meet, she's like, I'm from an island full of women. Do you think I'm actually interested in men? Basically implying that she's lesbian, and, she doesn't really need that. And that kind of immediately, like discards that whole section of her arc and makes it so much better, because when it comes to this whole important fight scene between Batman and Superman, and Wonder Woman is like in the middle, she has that one really, really good moment where she's like, my mother was right. I should never listen to men. I tried to trust you guys, but you guys don't know what the you're doing. And that's probably the best change they made.
At that point, I think she realized that Superman is ultimately selfish, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to his actions.
Yeah, and which is not as much
and she suffers the consequences.
Yeah, she suffers the consequences.
Without spoiling anything.
And actually, it's true, because in the comics, Superman asks Diana to make this huge sacrifice with the whole lasso and stuff. Yeah. But in the movie, she does it on her own, thinking that... thinking that, this is what's going to change, but she has to. She has no choice.
Yeah. What I think is really good in this movie is this foreshadowing that they do at one point where, I forget where, but it's fairly early on when Superman is still kind of very idealistic, and Diana like just comes out of something and she's just like, men. And Superman goes like, not all men. And I'm like,
not all men.
He's going to turn into a jerk.
That's you have a lot of that kind of tone in this film. It's
slightly
a lot
anachronistic, like hinting at, won't the world be different in 2020?
Yeah, they've also kind of made some other kind of like changes to from the original, where Jimmy Olsen is black now, and it kind of becomes important later on because I don't know. Spoiler? It's a spoiler, but whatever. Yeah. But in the original, Jimmy Olsen is still white and things like that. So it's cool. This is the second time Jimmy Olsen is now black, because they've done it in Supergirl as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there he's hot.
He's a hot guy, dude. In that, he's Jimmy Olsen is suddenly like fly. Anyway, so that's Superman Red Sun. Let's just take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some of the other films that have come out in the last year.
How many times have you motivated yourself to improve your sleep, or lose weight, or be more productive? How many times have you failed? Hi, my name is Ashton Doctor. Tune into my show, The Habit Coach Podcast, where we focus on creating small, tiny habits to improve your life instead of those big, impossible tasks. So make listening to me a habit every Monday, Wednesday and Friday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com or on your favorite podcasting app.
Hey guys, we're back. We're talking about other DC animated films that have come out. So there have been a fair few films that have come out since the last time we did an episode of this nature. Haven't
they been churning them out, especially of late?
I think they've just got a good, workflow in place right now. And since they've made this like part of their they're not treating this like they're not treating it like we have to decide what we're going to make next. This is just part of their thing, that we make adaptations of our comic book runs. What's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one? So I think because you can tell that the animation and the art style is fairly consistent-ish across all of these. I think they change it a little bit when it comes to like these Elseworld styles. But if you
like
look
Batman
at
Ninja.
Hush, which is a movie... yeah, exactly. But Hush, a movie that came out, I think last year, which is obviously based on the comic book of the same name, which is an amazing comic. Everyone should read it. One of the seminal Batman arcs, and what they did that is adapt it into their own DC like New 52 kind of continuity. So it's the same actor who's been playing. What do you call it? Batman from the previous Batman movies, like Son of Batman, etc. And but they've just incorporated that Hush storyline into the ongoing run. So I think they already know what they're doing, like just going ahead with this format. But yeah, let's talk about Hush because I have so many thoughts. Oh my god.
Well, what are your thoughts straight off? Because I was not the biggest fan. I thought it was okay.
Oh my god,
honestly,
I was
didn't
so
hate it.
disappointed.
I was so disappointed. I mean,
yeah?
reading
I
the
didn't
comic,
hate it.
like the comic is so visually striking.
I
thought
know,
it was
that was
very.
the biggest issue, honestly. And I
Yeah.
mean, this is again a movie where they change stuff around. Do you think they do that just because they know they're talking to a fan base who already knows the story really well?
I think so, for sure. But man, first of all, you're right. Jim Lee, who is, I think, one of the best artists around for Batman, right? Like he's made some iconic like Batman looks, with the whole blue and gray suit. He took the Neil Adams art and he made it contemporary and like awesome. And Bruce Wayne, even just the writing of Bruce Wayne and Catwoman and all of that is really, really great in that run. Even though it's now been a few years, like it's been almost more than a decade. So one, of course, I was missing the art style. Secondly, they made a glaring change to the comic book, which was absolutely devastating to watch on screen.
I think we were initially pretty disappointed because Jim Lee did, set such a precedent when it comes to a certain design language, which everyone thought was just f***ing awesome. So when it came to the actual film, it was pretty bland. Everyone expected a lot more. I think that's what the general consensus.
Yeah, definitely.
And man, they changed the ending not to make it better, but to just like turn it into the most lazy ending. They could have just stuck with the original comic. It would have been so much better.
But we can't talk about that change without spoiling
absolute
it. Huh?
Shame.
But have you guys seen these other DCAU movies that have come out since our last installment? Death of Superman, Reign of the Superman, Wonder Woman Bloodlines? Because I've only seen Hush and Red Sun.
No, so we've seen both of them, Death of Superman and Reign of Superman. Actually, I didn't think it was terrible. It was fine. I think it was better than Hush, that's for sure.
I mean, the original comic is pretty much just like Doomsday punches Superman to death, and that's it.
So with Reign of Superman, I wasn't that excited because Doomsday had come out I think 2006, and I think the general vibe was that I think when Superman died in the comics, I think in the 90s, it was like a historic event. All these newspapers were publishing, and it was like just the talk of the town. But I think what's happened now is those kids reading these comics have basically grown up, and I guess they have their own version of that story. But yeah, it didn't hit home for me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the fight sequences were
10 pages of punching.
obviously fucking awesome. And you can't go wrong in that department.
I don't know, man. Like,
But yeah, I think it was a little too long, and we've seen it all before.
that's true. I mean, yeah, there is another version of this movie that came out. But I don't know, man. Like, I actually really am a big fan of Steel, and we got to see all of those different versions of Superman, Superboy Prime, who kind of are trying to fill the place of Superman, and I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was.
So there's this comic which is White Knight, which is not Elseworlds, but it could be. Basically, what happens is the Joker takes some crazy pills, but those pills actually make him completely sane. He's not crazy anymore. So he gets locked up, and what he does is he pretty much learns, how to get out of prison through education. He becomes a lawyer, and eventually he pretty much becomes like a commissioner of types in Gotham, and like the people love him, and his main task is to basically take down Batman through the law, which is just like
cool.
I've not read anything like that, and it's like it's on the same level of like Court of Owls, which I think they should also make into DCAU.
They have made it.
They have? Movie. They made Court of Owls?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, we've seen it together.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
No, you have. You totally have.
If you're recommending stuff, I will. So I just finished the Harley Quinn series a few days ago, and I've talked about it before, but I will plug it again because, man, that show surprises me with how good it is. The first few episodes, I was like, this is not bad. By the end of it, it's just really, really good. So you should definitely check that out.
All right, with that, we come to the end of this edition of the Geek Fruit podcast. If you guys like anything that you've heard and you want to comment or say something about all the DC animated movies, just write to us, contactgeekfruit@gmail.com. You can also find us on all social media at GeekFruitHQ. And yes, we shall see you guys later. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. See you soon.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Paisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Paisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
Welcome to Peak Planet, a new podcast where we delve into the fallouts of the growth path that we, and indeed much of the world, has chosen. Sustainable growth is the buzzword. Until we nail that down, we need to ensure that we keep our population healthy and also have the resources for our increasingly urban lifestyles. I'm Karthik Ganesan, a researcher at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, a Delhi-based policy research institute where for almost a decade we've been trying to explain and change the use, reuse and misuse of our resources. In the first season of Peak Planet, we take up air pollution, public enemy number one and an invisible one at that. Increasingly, the most important risk factor for adverse health outcomes, air pollution has become the most unwanted byproduct for an aggressively growing economy. Over 4 episodes, we find out how prepared our systems are to deal with this crisis. You can catch the entire first season of Peak Planet out now on the IVM Podcasts app or website or wherever you get your podcast from.